Here we go. It'll start any moment now.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to Aids to Scouting. We have a great program for you tonight. I hope it's going to be great. Let's see, because it's kind of going to be taped live and go out to the world. We have tonight Harold White of the National Scouting Museum out in Arizona, and we had the World Scouting thing, that museum, the one that's in Charleston a few weeks ago, and now Harold's going to take us through this. And Harold's got his own, he puts own posts up to Facebook all the time. And so Harold, take it away, son. Tell us about the National Scouting Museum so that people all over the world will know what you're doing there.
Not a problem. The National Scouting Museum is actually located at Philmont Scout Ranch in Cimarron, New Mexico, not Arizona. So we'll fix that one. But
yeah. Oh my God.
It's all good. Somebody earlier today moved Philmont to Texas, so now we've bordered it on either side. We're in good shape. This museum opened in 2018, in the fall of 2018. Literally, the day that the big fire started out here was the soft grand opening of the museum for all the staff, and then the very next day they evacuated all of us to Springer. And we came back 3 days later, and then in the fall they did the official grand opening of the museum. So it's been here since 2018. I started working here in April of 2019, and have been just loving my job ever since. So what I'm going to do with you tonight is I'm going to give you I have what I call the basic tour of the museum, and I'm going to go ahead and turn my camera around here so you can see what I'm talking about. And usually when I bring people in, the very first thing I talk to them about is this drawer that I have pulled out right here. Now this drawer, I consider this probably one of the most important set of documents that we have here in the museum. This is sort of the founding of scouting around the world. There are 3 documents in here. There's the first one in here that is called the Summary of a Scheme. And this one is a document that was written by Baden-Powell in 1907. And it serves a really important purpose in that it defines the difference between a wartime scout and a peacetime scout. And of course, he intended for us to be a peacetime scout. The second one that's in here, the other thing that it does is it says that all the details of scouting will be outlined in a series of books or pamphlets called Scouting for Boys. And we'll talk about those in just a moment. The second document that's in here is called Boy Scouts: A Suggestion. And this is kind of a 30,000-foot view of scouting. And under BP's original plan, scouting was never intended to be a standalone organization. It was always intended to be a program delivered by some group that already existed, a YMCA, a boys club, a boys brigade in Great Britain, schools, things of that nature. Now, if you go back a little bit to where all that sort of kind of came about and why he got to the point where he was here, it all goes back to the very first book about scouting that he wrote, which is the one that your podcast is named after, Aids to Scouting. And this was originally a training manual. One of the things that BP discovered is that young British men were showing up to learn how to be soldiers, and they just really did not have the skill set that he wanted them to have to be very successful at becoming soldiers. And so he put together Aids to Scouting. Well, when this got back to England and got published, interestingly enough, it got picked up by a lot of kids and youth groups and things of that nature, and they were using the skills in it. Well, this book was written about wartime scouts, and that really bothered BP that kids were using this. So after Mafe King and he returned to England, he started out to publish a non-military version of it. Now, originally when BP went to the publisher, he said, look, I've got this book. I'm going to break it up into chapters or smaller versions, and we'll go ahead and I'll get you the first one. You guys publish it, and then we'll publish the rest of them later. And the publisher said, that's not how this works. You'll write all of them, you'll give them to us, we'll edit them, and then we'll release them. So, because if you miss a date, if you miss a publication, people will stop reading it and they won't sell. So BP agreed, and he published the book. And in January of 1908, the first part one, went out. Now this happens to be an entire set of all 6 of the original publications. These are all original copies of it. The following year, in 1909, they were all bound together into a single volume called Scouting for Boys, and that became the handbook of the British Scouting Association, and is even still today the handbook of the British Scouting Association. Now, to test all these ideas, as everyone knows, he went to Brown Sea Island, and the third document that's in here, because he was a military man, he wrote an after-action report about Brown Sea Island, all the things that worked, all the things that didn't, the things that he wanted to do over or do differently. And so, as I said, this is kind of the founding of scouting in a drawer, and it's a pretty fascinating piece. There you go, pretty fascinating piece of history, and it's really kind of cool to be able to bring people here into the museum and show them these documents and the books, and talk about how that sort of launched what we know as the Scouting Association around the world. Now, one of the other things I talk to people a lot about when they get here is sort of how we got to where we are in the United States with the Boy Scouts of America. And the very first thing you have to know is that there are a number of people who came together. About 30 individuals were originally pulled together by a guy named Livingston to put together the basics of scouting. And one of those, of course, was Ernest Thompson Seton. Ernest Thompson Seton had the Woodcraft Indians, and we have a nice display on him here that talks a lot about his Woodcraft Indians and the birch bark roll. And of course, he was an artist and also an author. And that's an important piece of this, because BP, Ernest Thompson Seton, William Boyce, and Daniel Carter Beard were all authors. And Boyce, although he wasn't an artist, they were all artists as well. And so art and writing were very important. William Boyce, of course, is the individual that we credit with bringing scouting to the United States. There's some debate as to whether he actually saw fog in London and the whole story of the Good Turn. It's a great founder story, but it may not be totally based in fact. I believe the only day that there could have been fog in London in 1909 would have been December 22nd, I believe was the date. And so there's a lot of discussion about whether or not he actually was lost in the fog or he just asked for directions and a scout helped him out. Either way, it's a great founding story. And of course, it is how he came to the United States and brought scouting to the United States. Now, one of the interesting things also that comes about is we talk a lot about the national charter, the federal charter for the Boy Scouts of America. William Boyce wanted a federal charter in 1910, and every year from 1910 to 1916, we applied for a federal charter. Now, the reason that a federal charter was not granted in 1910 has nothing to do with the need or any of that kind of issue. It's purely a legal reason. They did not grant a national charter in 1910 because the District of Columbia, where he registered incorporated the organization, was allowed to actually publish articles of incorporation, which is something that they were not allowed to do prior to that. And so a federal charter was the only way you could be a national organization like Scouting. With the need or without the need for that, they just issued articles of incorporation. And when, of course, then in 1916, we did actually get our federal charter. And then, of course, there's Daniel Carter Beard, who is also an artist. He had the Sons of Daniel Boone. Two of the things that are kind of interesting when you talk about Seton and Daniel Carter Beard and how they got involved in the organization, the important thing that they brought to the organization was credibility. They were both well-known, both as outdoorsmen and frontiersmen, but they had organizations that had bodies, and membership was key in those early days. William Boyce enrolled every one of his newspaper boys into the Boy Scouts of America when it was first founded, whether they wanted to join or not. There were 30,000 kids right in the starting gate. The Sons of Daniel Boone brought several thousand more. And of course, the Woodcraft Indians brought even more of those. And the Woodcraft Indians, believe it or not, are very, very popular today in Eastern Europe, Czechoslovakia, Poland, places like that. England has Woodcraft Indian groups. There's one chapter, if you will, left in the United States that still draws its heritage back from the original Woodcraft Indians, and that chapter is found in Los Angeles. So kind of an interesting little side note to the history of that. Well, as I mentioned, they're all authors. One of the things that they knew they needed to have straight away was a Scout handbook. And so they got Ernest Thompson Seton to take a bunch of his articles that he had written for Scribner's and Ladies' Home Journal and some of these other magazines and combine them with Scouting for Boys and a little bit out of the Boy Pioneers and his Birch Bark Roll, which is this one down here. He put all of those together and published what is commonly referred to as the original edition of the BSA handbook. Now you'll see multiple versions of the cover of this. There'll be ones that have both Seton and BP's name on them. They'll have prices at the bottom, no price at the bottom. They're just variations of the original handbook. But there's one that only has Seton's name on it, and that one was published in 1915 after he left the Boy Scouts. So that one is kind of one that he published on his own once he was no longer a part of the official organization. And that handbook got out there. It's what really got scouting off the ground. It gave kids out in the country and around the United States the opportunity to practice scouting skills. It took from all of those publications. And then at the end of 1910, Livingston decided that he wasn't going to accept the job to be the general secretary. And he went out to recruit somebody to take over as the general secretary, which was the original title of the head of scouting. And he found a guy that he knew from the YMCA, who had worked at the YMCA, by the name of James E. West. And he brought West in, and West had a lot of reservations about getting involved in the early scouting movement. He knew that scouting was broke. He knew that they were struggling and fledgling and there were competition. And so he had some reservations about it. And Livingston went to him and said, look, we can make this really simple. Take the job for 6 months. If it doesn't work out, if you're not happy, if it's not what you expected, no harm, no foul. We'll go in 2 different directions, and that'll be the end of that. And then, of course, 32 years later, he retired from the Boy Scouts of America with the self-proclaimed title of Chief Scout Executive, which is the title that he gave himself very early on as a way to identify who he was in the organization. As much as James E. West brought to the organization the structure and the bureaucracy and all of the things that made scouting successful on the business side, there was another young man who came around in the 1920s by the name of Bill Hillcourt, or Green Bar Bill. And Bill brought to the program side what West brought to the management side, if you will. And so Bill was from Denmark. He was a scout. His brother Harold gave him in 1910 a Danish copy of Scouting for Boys, or the Scout Handbook. Interestingly enough, this is the original copy that was given to Bill by his older brother, accompanied with a letter that he wrote to his parents saying he'd be home for Christmas, and he thought that Wilhelm, or Bill, would truly enjoy this idea of this book. Bill sat down the day after Christmas, read it, and the first week of January the following year, 1911, got together a bunch of his friends and started the very first patrol in Denmark, being scouts. No adults, just a bunch of kids doing what the Scout Handbook said to do. In 1926, Bill came to the United States as part of a world tour. He was going to go around the world and learn all of the best practices of scouting, and then take them back to Denmark and make Denmark the world headquarters for scouting. He got to New York City, got a job working at a summer camp in the 10 Mile Rivers area, worked that summer. James E. West knew of him. He had a bigger plan. He was going to go to every department within the BSA and work there for a period of time to learn how we did scouting in the United States. And he did. He started out on that adventure, and he went to the supply division. And while he was there, a box of signal flags from the First World War, surplus signal flags from the First World War, fell over and broke his leg. And while he was convalescing, he was picking up his mail from the national office in New York City. One day he goes in to get his mail and he runs into James West as they're getting on an elevator. West starts to talk to him. He knows, of course, who he is and what he's doing. And he says, well, what do you think about scouting in the United States? And Greenbar Bill says, there are 4 floors is not enough to tell you all of my opinions. I'll write you a letter. So he goes back and he writes a memo that's somewhere around 28 pages long that talks about all the things that he likes about scouting in America and the things that he dislikes and the things he would change. And one of the big things he changes or says needs to be changed is the patrol method. He thinks that we don't pay enough attention to the patrol method in the United States. And so he sends this off to West, and West reads it and writes a nice reply basically saying, I agree with some of your thoughts. I don't agree with all of them. How would you like a job? And you can fix our programming issues. And so Greenbar Bill joins the National Council as a professional scouter with the charge of fixing some of the programming. He later goes on to bring Wood Badge to the United States. He attends a British version of Wood Badge in the United States, and then he attends an American version of Wood Badge and leads the first 2 courses, one at Schiff Scout Ranch and one or Scout Reserve and one here at Philmont Scout Ranch, and is sort of the father of what we would consider modern Wood Badge. Although he writes a curriculum that we never completely adopted, he does have his fingerprints all over it. He goes on to write Scout handbooks, Scoutmaster's handbooks, field books. The likelihood that somebody in scouting even today has not been touched by Greenbar Bill or one of his thoughts is very, very small, because he had so many great ideas that he brought into scouting on the programming side. And so this section of the museum over here, we refer to this as the Founders Corner. It talks really about the founding of scouting and who these people were. You'll see this flag up here on the wall. This might tickle your funny bone, Walker. This flag was BP's personal ensign that flew at Mayking. It flew over the hotel that his headquarters was in. It later flew, there's a famous photograph of Brown Sea Island where BP's standing in front of a white kind of pyramid-shaped tent, and this flag can be seen hanging off to the left side of that tent, I believe it is. And then there's another photograph of BP's office when he was in London, and this flag is on a staff in there when BP's wife was deciding what to do with all of his personal effects. She wasn't sure what to do with them. Greenbar Bill had a good, deep personal relationship with BP and Lady BP. And so he talked about, why don't you leave them to the National Museum, which had just recently opened back in New Jersey. And BP thought about it and thought that was a great idea. And so we ended up with a huge collection of BP's materials, including that flag right there. So I think that's a pretty cool piece.
This is a wonderful tour. Harold, I just can't tell you how wonderful this is. I know a lot of this already, but that's because I'm old and I've been reading it all my life. And it's just great. And that's so remarkable. Thank you.
I'm glad.
Keep going.
Glad you're enjoying it.
Oh, yes. I hope our watchers all around the world are enjoying it as much as I am.
So this item right here, this is the very first Eagle Badge or Eagle Medal that was ever awarded in 1912 to Arthur Eldred. Interestingly enough, Arthur had his border review on January 31st, 1912. They didn't tell him that he had passed it until April of 1912, and they didn't award him his medal until Labor Day weekend of 1912 because they hadn't finished the design and the first one hadn't been cast yet. Now, the requirements for being an Eagle Scout back then were very different than today. You essentially became a first-class scout and you earned 21 additional merit badges. An Eagle Scout was not a rank back then. It was considered an extra badge of merit, or a bigger badge of merit, if you will. So these are the 21 merit badges taken from the sleeve of Eldred's shirt. We know that those are the badges because this picture here, you can see those badges on the sleeve that he's wearing. That's the provenance of that particular piece that was gifted to the museum many, many years ago. Interestingly enough, Life and Star were also not ranks. Arthur did not earn Life or Star, and 7 of the first 10 Eagle Scouts never earned Life or Star. They were never recognized as that. In the 1920s, the National Office realized that they were giving out Life and Star at the same time, and so they flip-flopped them. You got Star for 5 merit badges beyond first class, and then Life you got when you completed life-saving, athletics, personal health, public health, and first aid, 5 very specific merit badges. But of course, not all those were required in order to be an Eagle Scout at the time. Also, up until the 1960s, adults could earn Eagle Scout. And this right here is the very first adult Eagle ever awarded in 1912 to Sidney Clapp. You'll notice that it has a ribbon on the back of it. There is no rhyme or reason to when or where or why there's a ribbon on the back of random Eagle ribbon or Eagle medals. They're not all adults. Some youth have them. They're not all from any particular time period, and they're not all from any single manufacturer. We haven't been able to find any documentation that indicates what makes that different or special, just something that got manufactured that way. And so anyway, Sidney Clapp was the first Eagle Scout adult. Now, Walker, you may or may not know this, so I'll give you a pop quiz. What changed in the requirements for Eagle Scout that made it so that adults were no longer eligible to become Eagles?
I don't know.
In the 1960s, they added one single requirement. They said that you had to fill a warrant position of leadership within the troop, and warrant positions were restricted to youth. And that's why they name in the Scout Handbook the positions that qualify for leadership and don't just leave it open. So by naming patrol leader, senior patrol leader, assistant senior patrol leader, scribe, quartermaster, etc., that made it impossible for adults to complete that requirement. So they never disallowed adults from earning it. They just made it impossible for them to complete the requirements. Another interesting feature up here is this digital counter that you see up here. This advances about every 17 and a half minutes. And on average in Scouting America, a new Eagle Scout comes into being every 17 minutes. Every year, right after the annual meeting, when NISA announces how many Eagle Scouts there are, we adjust this, do some quick math, and figure out how many should be up there. And so this has been updated from last year's number, and will get updated again after the national meeting later this year.
Harold, one thing that when BP is appearing, you see that when BP is appearing, he sometimes says to the adults that he thinks maybe that Eagle Scouts are a little bit overrated, and that because a lot of children can't get it for reasons like their troop falls apart or their parents move or something. So he says that the emphasis is on first class scouts and first class citizens. And I think that's an important thing for us all to remember.
It absolutely is. And when I was very active in a troop in Florida, we always treated first class as very special. And we always told kids that you would be a first class scout when we were comfortable that you could take our son at the time, because there were only boys back then, when you could take my son into the woods and bring him home relatively unscathed. And if something did happen, you knew enough first aid to keep him alive until you could get him back to get him real help. And we jokingly told that to the kids, that's what we considered was very important to being a scout. As an Eagle Scout myself, sometimes I do think we place way too much emphasis on it. I think that's just one of those things that it might even be something that's inherent in being a citizen of the United States, because we have a tendency to overinflate those kinds of accolades. I don't believe that you're a poor scout if you don't make Eagle. I believe you can be an incredibly successful scout and never cross that finish line without feeling any remorse for it. To me, I agree with that to some degree, that it is a little bit overblown.
Speaking of that, you can probably tell us the statistic, which I am about how many back in the days before girls were in the Scouting America. West Point used to have a tremendously high level of scouts that were accepted to West Point, and of them, it's my understanding that most of them were Eagle Scouts.
That's recently come up with all the kerfluffle over the DoD and Scouting America and organizations overseas. And I'll 100% transparency. My scouting experience started in Far East Council on a military base in Seoul, South Korea. I think it's crazy that we would consider not allowing kids in those communities to have access to all the benefits of scouting. I can trace almost everything amazing that has happened in my life to an event in 1972 on a military installation. So that being said, I tend to agree with the notion that there are probably a disproportionately large number of Eagle Scouts at West Point and at the Naval Academy and even the Air Force Academy. Every summer out here, we have what we call the Academy Ranger program, and we bring cadets from those three institutions, as well as the Coast Guard Academy occasionally, that come out here, and the vast majority of them, the males anyway, are Eagle Scouts. And now that women and young ladies are able to earn Eagle, we're starting to see a few of them trickle in too through that program that were active in their local programs around the country. Speaking of female Eagle Scouts, this young lady right here, Katie Hunter, was a member of the inaugural class of Eagle Scouts in 2020. And she was coming out here on a trek, and she reached out to me via email and said, "You guys have the very first Eagle Scout ever issued on display. I believe you should have one of the Eagle medals from the inaugural class of Eagle Scouts, female Eagle Scouts, on display as well." And I agreed with her. So she came out here and presented her Eagle medal to us, and we did a little ceremony with her to accept it, and it was on display, and it's on display now, as you can see. Now, the interesting thing about this, if you look, it's missing the little knot hanging from the second class emblem up there, the scroll. On her way here, that emblem fell off in one of the airports. Now, we offered to repair it and restore it to its original condition, and she looked at it after she gave it to us, and she said, "You know what? That's how I donated it. That's how it should be on display." And so, as you can see, the knot is not there, and we've maintained her wishes in keeping it the way that she donated it to us. One of the other things that appears in this particular case are the original merit badge sashes. The merit badge sash didn't come around until 1924. And if you look, you'll see there's both a 3-wide and a 2-wide merit badge sash. And the reason for the two differences was that for kids who didn't have as many merit badges, they wanted to make it look like they had as many on there, so they gave them a 2-wide merit badge sash, and kids with more had a 3-wide, and you can see how it kind of balances out between those 4 merit badge sashes up there. Speaking of merit badges, one of the things we talk to a lot of scouts about when they come out here is we have a display that shows, well, currently it's missing 3 merit badges. I need to update it, but it shows all of the merit badges that have been available throughout the history of scouting. And then we have a little quiz that we do with them, like, any idea what the symbol on the salesmanship merit badge is right there? And all of these, with the exception of one, which I'll tell you about in just a second, is the oldest version of it that we have in the collection. And the salesmanship merit badge, most people don't get this one. You might, Walker, as a lawyer, but that dash, those dashes that you see there represents the dotted line at the bottom of a contract. Sign on the dotted line. The one that
this kind of reminds me of when I was a scout. We had those old merit badges that were printed on a piece of cloth, and it was always kind of difficult to sew them on to shirts or merit badge sashes. And the modern ones with the, like we see that bird study right there, those are so much easier to sew on.
Now, another interesting one up here is the original Insect Life merit badge has a spider on it, which is an arachnid, not an insect. And so in I think it was 1927, they changed it over to an aphid, and it's been an aphid ever since. Another one that's got kind of an interesting story is the stalking merit badge. One of the original 57 merit badges available, and it was about tracking animals and things like that in the out of doors. In 2010, we brought 4 merit badges back to help celebrate the centennial. One of them was supposed to be the stalking merit badge, and someone on the committee said, "You guys do realize that today stalking's a felony, not an activity." And so they took the emblem from stalking and the requirements, but they changed it to tracking for that particular period of time.
Well, that's why we call our podcast and our group, we call it AIDS to Scouting with an E, AIDS, so that on searches on the search engines it won't be confused with a disease.
Right. I totally understand.
Yeah.
Totally understand that. There's a couple others up here that have got interesting stories to them. The Colonial Philadelphia Merit Badge. It was only available in 1975 and 1976, and you had to be a registered member of the Greater Philadelphia Area Council to earn it. It did not count towards advancement except for Eagle Palms. You could count it towards earning an Eagle Palm, but nothing else. The other merit badge I was going to mention to you about, the one that we don't have the oldest version of it on display, is the Weather Merit Badge. And this one's got kind of a funny story. When they were going to introduce the Weather Merit Badge, they went to the guy who designs merit badges and they said, "We're doing the Meteorology Merit Badge. Do you know what meteorology is?" And he said, "Of course I do. Meteor, stars, ology, study of." So the original Weather Merit Badge had a shooting star on it. That lasted until the supply ran out. They put a weather vane on it. It's been the weather vane ever since. So we do have this display on merit badges here. We talk about merit badge pamphlets with the kids and different types of merit badges. We show them some things like back in my day, the skill award program that was available for young scouts. Now all these requirements have been spread out from tenderfoot, second class, and first class. Kids are amazed at those little belt loops. We have a very nice display on uniforms, various uniforms over the years. Over here we have an original 1910 uniform, including the hat. I believe there's only 2 of these hats known to exist still out in the world. One of them's here. This is the 1912 hat, and that's the only known sample that we know of it. And of course, these are the uniforms that a scout would have worn back then, all the way down to the official scout shoes and the pooties that this particular scout is wearing. Pooties, tall socks, and oh shoot, I forget the name of the other leggings that you could get.
Jumpers?
No, there was another one. I'll think of it eventually. Those were all that were available for a scout to wear. And of course, we have the second oldest program available, Sea Scouting. Now, this is something you don't see very often, so I'll show you this before I go down the rest of the uniforms. This is an original 1912, actually 1919, because they didn't have an official uniform until 1919. This is an official Sea Scout jumper from 1919. You'll notice that it's khaki with a blue neckerchief and blue collar and sleeves and things of that nature. And you'll notice that this particular one has 3 stripes on it. Well, when they came about and they got the uniform that became the official Sea Scout uniform later in the program, they wanted to make sure that it wasn't confused with a Navy uniform, even though we told kids, go out and get old military uniforms. If you can't afford a uniform, an old uniform would work. So what they did was the piping on the collar and the piping on the sleeve down here. A Navy uniform has 3 braids, and a Sea Scout uniform only has 2. And so this is an official Sea Scout uniform, including the Dixie Cup hat. This one happens to be from the 1930s. Of course, we've got Explorer uniforms. This one's from the 1940s. The Air Scout program, which lasted from 1942 to about 1964, 65, somewhere in there, became Air Explorers at one point in time. We get a lot of kids who will come to the museum. They see Air Scouts. They get very excited, want to know how they can get involved in Air Scouts. I tell them to go on eBay, buy an Air Scout manual, and then go start a venture crew or an explorer post focused on aviation. And then, of course, we've got other, the Explorer and the venturing uniforms that were used and available for Scouts over the years. This happens to be the uniform that I would have worn in my youth when I earned my Eagle. That's the same Eagle patch that I have. This one was donated to the museum by a member of our museum task force, Tim Brown, a great scouter out of Kentucky. And so he brought that to our attention. Now, before we had backpacks and all those kinds of things, we had trek carts. And this trek cart, this particular one is from the 1920s. This one will also be near and dear to you, Walker. The idea behind this one, when you got to wherever it was that you were camping, you would take all your gear out, break this down, and it became the bed for the scoutmaster to sleep on. So it served a purpose outside of just getting you there. And there was a program called the Pine Tree Patrol Method. And this is an oversized version of part of the Pine Tree Patrol book. This was actually written by a guy by the name of Wilder. He was a scouter from what is now Aloha Council in Hawaii. And he put together the Pine Tree Patrol Method, which was a very, very regimented and detailed method for setting up and tearing down camp. It involved 8 boys. Everybody had a job. Everybody did their job. The world record for setting up a camp under the Pine Tree Patrol Method was 3 minutes. A complete camp set up in 3 minutes. I think that's insane that they were able to do that. But this, like I said, is a trek cart. There's also a backpacking version of the same concept called the Yucca Patrol Method, based on the old Yucca Pack from the 1950s. And this program was very big in the teens, 20s, and early 30s. And then it kind of faded away later on. Wilder also was extremely involved in the changing or the adjustments, if you will, to turn sea scouting from what it started out as to what we kind of recognize as the modern version. He wasn't the key one, that was Keene, but he was very much involved in that whole process of bringing sea scouting to a level of maturity that it enjoys today. We also have a section in here that's all about women in scouting. Women have been involved in scouting as den mothers going back to the 30s. Interestingly enough, den mothers did not lead Cub Scout dens in the very beginning. They actually assisted the den chief. The den chief, being a scout, was responsible for the den. The den mother just made sure that they had a place to meet and snacks and kept the kids out of trouble. But it was really the den chief's job. And then later that evolved, and the den mother actually became the leader, and the den chief assisted them. And so we've got some kind of cool things on display, such as a silver fawn. The silver fawn was what you awarded to women at the council level. They awarded it to women that were involved in scouting at the council level up until 1974, and then they merged it into the Silver Beaver Award. Interestingly enough, most women, when they were given the opportunity to exchange their silver fawn for a silver beaver, chose to keep their silver fawn and went on with that. Of course, we have a Oscar de la Renta 1980s Cub Scout dress. We also have one of the female scouter dresses and some of the other parts and pieces that came from that Oscar de la Renta redesign of the uniform. One of the really cool things that we have here on display are the honor medals. And the honor medals came basically in three flavors, if you will. There was a gold ribbon or gold medal on a white ribbon for extreme risk. In fact, you had to perish. Originally, you had to perish in order to earn a gold honor medal. Then they had high risk, which was on a, it was the, just drew a blank. It was on a red background, a bronze medal on a red background. And then the lowest one was the silver honor medal on a blue background, and that one was for even less risk. Now, up until from 1910, these started out at the very beginning of scouting. Up until 1910 to 1918, nobody had put in for a gold honor medal. Nobody had applied for one. And then they were getting ready to possibly discontinue the gold honor medal, and the National Court of Honor received 4 gold honor medal applications in the same week. We have 3 of the 4 on display, and the 4th one will never be on display anywhere. 2 of these young men earned their honor medal by saving somebody from drowning. One of them received their honor medal by stopping a runaway wagon and horses. And one of them earned his honor medal. He stopped a woman from committing suicide. She was trying to shoot herself. He tried to wrestle the gun away from her. She shot herself through the breast, and the bullet entered the young man's neck, and he died later from those wounds. So these are 3 of the 4 gold honor medals issued in 1918. And the one that we do not have was a young man by the name of Russell Grimes. Russell, his father thought he was the consummate scout. He was just, scouting was everything for him. And he stopped the wagon from running over somebody, and he brought the horses to a stop. But in the process of doing that, he got hit in the head and suffered a very bad brain injury. He died from those injuries. His father had him buried and was devastated. When they provided the medal to him, he had his body exhumed and the medal placed on his son's uniform that he was buried in, and had him reinterred. And so that's why that medal will never be on display anywhere. It's buried with the young man who earned it. Now, these honor medals do have a little bit of a personal touch to me. Back in 2022, a group of scouts came here to the National Museum, and they lowered the flags at the museum before they went home on the train the next morning. When they got on the train the next day, they got somewhere into Missouri, and the train hit a dump truck that stalled on the tracks, and the young scouts that were involved in it were thrown into action to help evacuate the train, tend to the wounded. One of the young men was actually with the driver of the truck when he passed. And so the honor medal was awarded to 5 of the young men that were involved in this, and the heroism award was awarded to the rest of the crew. I want to say it was like 12 or 14 other people that received it. Because I knew these young men, I met them, and I had many correspondence with their scoutmaster prior to them arriving out here to arrange for lowering the flags at the museum. As soon as I found out about the train derailment, I knew they were on the train. I started texting their scoutmaster, and it took him a couple of hours to get back to me and tell me that everybody was okay. But that was some kind of intense periods of time for me personally. It took a little while to kind of get through all that.
Harold,
Yeah.
we even mentioned that very incident on one of our previous programs.
Okay.
We had one on wilderness first aid. It might have been mentioned in that. And I believe that the young man that was with the driver was the senior patrol leader, and his father was the scoutmaster. As I heard the story.
That's totally possible. I do not remember those particular details, but I do know it. It got to me a little bit as we were going through the whole thing. I remember
when I was a child and I read Boy's Life, every month they had one of the heroism stories in it.
Yep.
And that was quite a thing. It was always something that you'd read. I can still remember some of those stories from 50 and 60 years ago.
A young man that I was in Scouts with in Florida, he earned a heroism award for rescuing a couple of people from a riptide at Jacksonville Beach. This particular one up here is the first honor medal awarded in the state of New Mexico. A young man by the name of Mike Cardenas rescued a woman from a burning house up in Raton, about 40 miles from here. And so we have his on display. Now, Mike has kind of an interesting story to himself. He, after his time as a scout, he joined the Navy and was assigned to the USS Indianapolis. And had it not been for an illness that got him stuck in a hospital on Guam, he would have been on board the Indianapolis when it was torpedoed in the Philippine Sea in 1945. But he was not on board the ship, came back to Raton, lived out the rest of his life, and actually passed away at his mother's home in Raton in 1967. So he had kind of an interesting story. I got 2 last items I'm going to show you. Then I'll answer any questions you guys have, or if there's questions in the chat or whatever you guys want to do. There's been a lot of discussion around scouting, about scouting with disabilities. We have a temporary display that's on here, that's here at the museum, about scouting with disabilities. It's sponsored by a gentleman out of Maryland by the name of Doug Schwab. Doug has a very personal connection to this part of scouting. When he was in college, he started a troop for scouts with disabilities in his hometown of Cumberland, Maryland. Last summer, they came out here on a trek. This is their troop, not on that trip, but that's his troop up there. Doug's all the way over there on the left-hand side. He brought his troop out here on a trek last year. I have done virtual tours with these guys, and then I had the opportunity to meet them in person this last year. And so that last summer. That was a pretty cool experience for me. Scouts with disabilities being involved in the organization, they date all the way back to the very beginning. Here's a picture of Troop 10. This was taken out of the annual report. This photo was in April of 1911. This is a troop from the School of the Blind in Kentucky. All scouts that are blind scouts that are participating in the program. We have copies of Braille handbooks on display, audio versions of it. We even have a Braille version of Boy's Life that we have on display here, and we have a Braille copy of A Boy's Life magazine that our docents will allow scouts to kind of touch and feel and see what it's like to look at the magazine in Braille, which I think is really a cool opportunity for kids when they come out here, something they may never see. Now, the last item I'm going to show to you are these 4 trophies right here. This is 4 of the 9 trophies that the Boy Scouts of America won at the 1924 World Jamboree. The 1924 World Jamboree was the only jamboree that ever had inter-country competitions. BP didn't like the nationalism that came out of it and sort of the way that it was treated. And so he said that would never happen again at a jamboree, and it never has. So the Boy Scouts of America can successfully say that they are the undisputed champions of the scouting world based on their performance at the 24 World Jamboree. They did not, contrary to popular belief, they did not win every event. They didn't even come close to that. They won enough points to take home the King's Trophy, which was the award for the best scout troop in the world. A funny story about it, on the last event that they had to participate in was a 2-day trek with an overnight stay in Denmark. And one of the boys didn't want to meet the king, and he didn't want to meet BP all nasty and sweaty after a 2-day hike. So he made arrangements for them to receive a bath right before they finished the race. Well, when they got to the location of the bathhouse, it turns out that there were 2 young ladies that were providing the baths, and they almost didn't finish the race. They almost got detoured and didn't make it. They did make it, finished the race, and won their award. Another thing that came out of that is the Jamboree patch, if you will. This was not actually a patch like we know a Jamboree patch today. This was actually your meal ticket. And that little number in the center indicated, who you were, and that's how you got in to get your food, was at that little patch. Many kids brought them back to the States, sewed them on their uniforms to wear as a patch. Unfortunately, they were made out of silk, and as soon as they washed them, they started to fall apart. So they're very, very rare and hard to find. We are very lucky to have 2 of them here. One of them we have is the one I just showed you there. The other one that we have is number 2 up there that was given to the King of Denmark. There's some debate as to whether number 1 or number 5,000 was issued to BP and Lady BP. I haven't really found a good definitive source that will confirm that one way or the other. If somebody's got one and want to send it to me, I'd love to see it, to see what it actually is, because a lot of people want to come in and argue about it. And then the last item up here that I'll show you is this shirt. This is a shirt that belonged to a scout from Michigan, from Holland, Michigan, named Seymour Padnos. He was very big in the recycling industry of the United States, helped to get it off the ground. He attended both the 1937 National and World Jamborees, but his probably bigger claim to fame, he learned how to swim at a camp by a guy by the name of Gerald Ford when he was a scout. And so I think that's a pretty cool story about his uniform shirt. So that is a whirlwind tour of just a small part of the National Scouting Museum. There's plenty of stuff here to see that I haven't talked to you at all about. There's a whole section on Philmont Scout Ranch. There's another section on the New Mexico, the Santa Fe Trail, all things that are part of this area around here that we just don't have time to hit it all in one night. But are there any questions I can answer for anybody?
Well, before we have a question, I have right here the badge for the 1963 World Jamboree that I was lucky enough to attend.
Yeah.
And by the way, I'm wearing my BP shirt here that I wear when I'm BP.
Mm-hmm.
Plus something I got at the World Jamboree that says I'm BP, so that must mean I am BP.
If it says it, it must be true.
That's right.
I do have one request. Is I know about there being some Norman Rockwell prints there that you have. Could you show some of those? Or
Well, the Norman Rockwell prints were part of the museum before we redid the this gallery back in 2022 or 2023. So they've been retired into the back room because they were just reprints. There were no originals here. There's never been any of the originals here. This place is not set up for the security required, nor the conditions. And I'll be honest with you, we were horrible caretakers of the Rockwells when they were in Irving. When they brought them out of the museum, they had to spend a lot of money to clean them and conserve them and preserve them before they put them into storage for an extended period of time, because we just didn't have the ability to take care of them the way that we really needed to.
understood.
How many square feet is the museum right there?
10,000 square feet. Yeah.
Oh, that's big.
Well, the museum in Irving was 50,000, but it was occupied by a lot of large participation activities, if you will.
I see. Yeah.
And really the purpose of the museum when it was in Irving was to be sort of a recruitment center for Cub Scouting. It had activities that kids could crawl around on, and it had a laser target range in it. It had a Pinewood Derby course. It had a number of things like that that were really for an age group that is not our core audience anymore. We also, if you want to shoot a gun, we'll send you down the road about a mile, and you can shoot at a state-of-the-art range for airsoft, BB guns, 22s, shotguns, slingshots, archery, whatever you want to do. We don't need to put it into the museum. And if you want to go on a high adventure trek, that's all we do around here is high adventure treks. So the need for those kinds of activities just aren't there. Also, the thing that made a huge difference bringing it here is the number of people that we see at the museum is well over 21 to 22,000 annually. When the museum was in Dallas, it was seeing about 19,000 people, or in Irving, it was seeing about 19,000 people a year. So just being here gives us a better shot at getting more people. And we know that about a third of our audience that comes in, a quarter to a third of our audience that comes in, are people that have nothing to do with scouting. They're driving down the interstate, they see a billboard, they read online that we're in Cimarron, they're driving down the interstate and take the detour and come over and check the museum out.
Well, that brings up a thing Harold, as I've told you, we are hoping that as things develop, that Aids to Scouting podcasts, which are posted, I guess, more or less permanently on YouTube, that they'll be watched by people all around the world. And so what I would like to make sure that our brothers and sisters around the world know is that they are welcome to come
absolutely.
to the museum. We had I think I told you we had the gentleman that runs the one in Charleston, West Virginia, of the World Museum. So at any rate, I just hope that you'll get more than 20,000. You'll get 40,000.
I would love that.
Yes, and it looks like y'all have a great operation there. How about it, Elliot? You look like you got a question.
Well, we've got some stuff coming in from the comment section. A
great.
gentleman, Rob Hires, of the Flint River Council here, it says, what is needed today to help the museum?
Well, it depends on what you mean by needed today to help the museum. If you're talking about donations, there's an article that will come out in the International Society of Scouting Memorabilia Collectors, ISCA, their magazine next month, with kind of our top 10 of things that we're looking for. Off the top of my head, even though I wrote the article, I don't remember what the top 10 were. But there's a variety of items on there. And if somebody wants to reach out to me about those kinds of things, I'll be happy to include them on that. And I believe that article gets posted publicly at some point in time. If you're looking for donations, probably the biggest donation in terms of like cash that we're looking for at the moment. Back in October, we suffered a horrendous hailstorm here at Philmont. And part of the National Scouting Museum's responsibility also includes the Via Philmonte, which was Wade and Genevieve Phillips' New Mexico home, the people who donated Philmont to the Scouts. And there was extensive damage done to the house. The roof is being replaced. All the tiles on the roof are being replaced starting in April, I believe it is, and it'll probably run through the first part of June. All of the windows had to be replaced. There is a ton of tile outside that was damaged that will need to be repaired and replaced. And a lot of it is handmade tiles because these were true craftsmen that Wade Phillips hired to build that home. And so over the next couple of years, we're trying to raise approximately $2 million to do all of the renovations and the restoration that needs to be done that wasn't covered by insurance, because nothing outside was basically covered by insurance. If you've been to Philmont before, you know about the big stained glass window in the staircase. That window was damaged. It's actually in Waco, Texas right now, being repaired by a group of scouters, interestingly enough, a family of scouters that are taking care of that treasure for us. And we hope to have that back within the next year or so after they rebuild a nearly 100-year-old piece of stained glass. So those are some of the things that are probably the biggest needs at the moment is the restoration money for the villa. That's probably the biggest thing right now.
Is there a link that we can post, Elliot?
Yeah. So I was going to ask what's a good way to get in contact with you, or where should people look to donate for things?
There is. I have not looked. I just didn't look this evening because I didn't expect this question to come up. But there's supposed to be a link on the Philmont website for donating to. That would be philmontscoutranch.org. There's supposed to be a link on there where people can donate to the restoration funds for the villa. I know they've already raised about $100,000, so it's not, it's not out of the question that they'll reach that amount. Obviously, every little bit counts, and I tell people all the time, if you come to Philmont to go on a trek, you absolutely have to go do a tour of the Via Philmonte. Now, not everybody's going to get to do that, so we have a virtual version of it on our website. You can go to the museum's website and do a virtual walkthrough of the villa. But the reason it's so important is because when you go and you do a tour in person, and soon you'll have all this audio on there as well, you really learn about the benevolence of Wade and Genevieve Phillips. You learn about why they donated 130,000 acres to the Boy Scouts of America in an effort to try to take all of the things that Philmont meant to their family and their son and their daughter and the way they grew up, and share them with kids and adults all over the world. They did not believe that this magnificent property should be restricted to one family and their friends. They thought it should be shared by as many people as could come out here. And so, since 1938, 1939, we've had, well over 1 million campers camp in the backcountry. We've had probably hundreds of thousands of families and scouters come to the Philmont Training Center. We've got all sorts of new programs out here that are designed to get people an opportunity to come to Philmont. We have a new program called Unit Adventure Camp, where a troop can bring their scouts that are not old enough to go on a trek. They can bring them out here and spend a week in a summer camp-like experience, more hiking and backpacking kind of activities, not as heavy on merit badges as a traditional summer camp, but definitely that opportunity. We also have a thing called Family Adventure Camp, where you can just bring your family out here and go on vacation. You and your wife can come out here and hang out for a week in one of our tents, eat dining hall food, hike in the backcountry a little bit, come to the museum, work on your favorite art project. I mean, there's just a lot of things that are available for kids that believe they can't afford to come to Philmont. I would suggest look into the individual trek programs, the STEM programs, Rayado. The Philmont Staff Association offers up scholarships for kids involved in those individual trek programs. The ranch also does scholarships for kids coming out on regular treks. This year's money has already all been allocated, but we definitely we try to make it as affordable as possible to get as many scouts and scouters. And Family Adventure Camp's not open just to scouters. It's open to anybody who wants to come out here and experience the magnificence of northeastern New Mexico.
That's great. That is just great. How far are you from Los Angeles area?
From Los Angeles, I want to say we're 9 hours to the Grand Canyon, probably another 6 hours, 7 hours from there, maybe. So 15, 16 hours, something like that. I know it's a long drive.
Well, I've noticed that modern cars are much more comfortable than the ones I drove once went from Tallahassee to Albuquerque with no air conditioning. And,
Yep.
And then modern cars have the books on tape and things like people can listen to Spotify, and they can listen to Aids to Scouting on Spotify now. So
you mentioned some of the other stuff that we're doing around here. Our series, Artifact of the Week, we actually, that's got an international audience to it. We have people all over the world that watch our weekly videos that we post on Facebook and YouTube. I was shocked to find out that prior to the war in Ukraine, we had about 700 people who watched regularly in the Ukraine.
Good grief.
Since the war, that number's dropped a little bit. And I mean, I realize that I'm incredibly engaging, charming, and have a beautiful smile, but I do not beat a war. So I get that.
Yeah.
But yeah, we have viewers all over the world: China, Egypt, South Africa, and then of course all over the United States, which is kind of cool.
Well, Harold, one thing when BP is talking to scouts, he says that it was we've repeated this on our program several times, but he says to them, he says, scouting is very serious business disguised as a game. And if you don't believe that, look at your fellow scouts throughout the world who are, for example, fighting in a war in the middle of the winter, and
Yep.
and have had to step forward, to step up like true scouts and help people and be brave when they overcome fear and face fear and to learn all the skills that are important. I say to even an 11-year-old that it's not about getting a badge for first aid. It's about saving somebody's life if they're bleeding to death.
Mm-hmm.
You need to know what to do. So that's very serious, but that's scouting.
One of the things that is, to me, is kind of cool is I've got a good friend of the museum, Nelson Block out of Houston. And Nelson is involved with scout units in a variety of countries that he helps support. And I just got his recent newsletter where he talks about the Ugandan scouts who are, their thing is all about community service. They're opening up schools and distributing food and medical supplies and books so that kids can learn. It has nothing to do with earning a badge. It has to do with helping people survive life. And I think that's, the Boy Scouts of America made their reputation in the early days of this organization through community service. And if we're really serious about getting back out into communities and becoming the organization that we once were, that's going to be the path to it. It's going to be getting out in your community, showing the value that scouting provides, not just in developing leadership skills, but in really truly giving back to your local community and making a difference. Yeah. That's, by the way, that's Harold White's opinion, not an employee of Scouting America. That's just something I think is critical.
Yes. Well, I think that's it's you said something about the kerfuffle or whatever we call it about the Department of Defense recently. And it seems like anybody that thinks scouting is less than extremely valuable in this country was not a scout.
And no, I would agree.
And doesn't understand what they're complaining about. And, a lot of people, I may not be cheerful all the time, but scouting is serious business. And it feels that, to me, it fills a very important gap between a person's formal education and real life. And in fact, I kind of consider scouting more important than schooling. So that's just a prejudice on my part, but I've been involved in scouting one way or another since I was 6 years old.
Mhm. We spoke earlier about the train incident, and and the heroism award and those and that type of thing. And we had a comment that said that that's the actual intention of scouting is to be prepared for situations like that and situations of the more mundane. But being prepared, being a first class scout and a first class citizen. The Rob Hires, who asked a question earlier, also said that that heroism on the Boys Life magazine, the heroism page, that's what kept him in scouting for all those years. And then
That's cool.
we do have one more thing. You are the program specialist for the National Scouting Museum. The program specialist for the Flint River Council asked here, you're not prepared for this question either, is how can we start a camp museum for our camp and our council?
We'd be happy to help you do that. The first thing you got to do is start gathering up stuff. And the single most important thing, any museum, this is the single most important thing. This is what separates a museum from a collection.
Mm-hmm.
The story. Mm-hmm. I told you the story about a shirt back there by a guy that was involved in scouting back in the 30s. Mm-hmm. The story is what makes that shirt interesting. Otherwise, it's just one of a million scout uniforms that are out there. Yeah. So the story is key. So develop the story and then find the artifacts to support the story. If you reach out to me here at the museum, and my information is available in a variety of places. So you can get me by email or you can call the museum. I'll be happy to talk to you. We definitely would be happy to give you some guidance, some advice, try to help you get started, connect you to people that can help you that are much closer than we are to you. That are experts also in museums and collections and things of that nature. If we could get more scouting museums started around the country, that would be very awesome, because the story is not just the National Scouting Museum, but it's the local scouting experience and what scouts have meant to that community. I can't tell all those stories here. I can only tell the ones that are kind of big. We need people like that gentleman. I didn't catch his name. Greg?
Yes, sir.
Greg. We need people like Greg to tell the story of the kid down the street from him who made a difference in their community, whether it was yesterday or in 1922. Those are the stories that are going to propel scouting.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you ever so much, Harold. This has been great. We might even have to get you back for an encore performance in the future, because it's just maybe sometime when your museum's full of scouts and you can drag one up to the camera and have him tell about all that scouting's done for him.
I'd be happy. What's that?
Maybe we'll come visit you.
I was going to say, you guys can come out, do a road trip, do a couple of episodes out here. We'll help make that possible for you, get you set up out at the training center. I can promise you a small tent and dining hall food. That's about it.
Sounds good to me.
That's a lot. That sounds great.
By the way, Elliot, you share the same name as Wade Phillips' son, Elliot Phillips, who they called him out here Chope. The Mexican Cowboys named him Chopito, and the family called him Chope. One of the reasons Wade Phillips donated all this land to the Boy Scouts was Chope wanted to be a rancher, and his dad had no interest in him being a rancher. He wanted him to go into either banking or oil or something that was a little different than ranching. And Elliot, he grew up, went to war during World War II, served in the I believe it was the Army Air Corps, and then came back. And his father had given away this property, so he bought a ranch down by Las Vegas, New Mexico, and became a rancher. And he used to visit out here pretty routinely up until he passed in 2015. So you got a good namesake. Now you got to come out and find out what the other Elliott's like.
I would love to do that. I would love to do just that.
All right. Well, Harold, we could talk all night. That's what we say every time we have one of these episodes, because we have such great people like you on here, And so thank you ever so much. And thank you for carrying on all those stories and of scouting. And
Yes.
and also I love your presentations and your artifact of the week and all that. So that's just great.
Yeah,
And
more people. I check them out because there's almost 250 of them now. And in fact, when I get done here, I'm going to go back and finish the last piece of this one on uniforms, adult uniforms, and then next week we'll wrap up uniforms with some just tidbits about uniforms. Like, did you guys know that back in the day you had to show your membership card to buy a uniform?
No.
That was a requirement in the early days. You had to show your membership card to buy a uniform. And for places that didn't have a council office, because councils weren't originally in every community, you could buy buttons from the national office. Your scoutmaster could buy buttons from the national office, and then you could buy a locally produced shirt and put the buttons on it, and that made it an official scout shirt. But we'll talk more about that next week.
Sounds great. All right,
I want
thank
to
you.
say,
Yeah, what
I
Elliot?
just wanted to say thank you to everyone who's watching right now. Greg says, thanks for sure. We'll definitely have an amazing story at Thunder. That's our local council camp. Mr. Hires says, great job. And he learned that adults can go to Philmont and families can go to Philmont. So thank you for everything. This has been absolutely wonderful. Thanks everyone for watching and joining us on another episode of Aids to Scouting. Walker, take it away.
Oh, I don't have to take it away. It's been great. Thank you, Harold. Appreciate
You bet.
it. And all right, Elliot, do we need to hang on for just a second?
Yep.
You wind it up or what?
Here we go.
Here we go.